Today's material is going to be for our fundamental students. Summer term, this is your AD material for your second strike. Okay, first thing we're going to look at is a pattern for this term, which is going to be the foundation Hyung. For our second strike, we will be looking at the 3 merits of a good pattern: good technique, power, and focus. First thing we're going to look at is going to be good technique. Good technique, we're going to be focusing on 3 things with good technique: proper stances, and then good technique with our blocks and our strikes. So the first time through foundation Hyung, we're going to go ahead and name the stances that each technique is done in. It's really important to make sure your stance is correct so your techniques are done as correctly as possible. If you're in the wrong stance, the technique's not going to work as well. So foundation Hyung, first time through, we're going to name the techniques. I'm going to go ahead and just keep my hands on my hips. So I'm not even going to do the hand techniques and blocks the first time through, just so you can focus just on the stances. Okay, foundation Hyung, naming stances. Front stance, front stance, L stance, front stance, front stance, and we remain in the front stance for that last technique. Turn into a front stance, L stance, front stance, and you remain in the front stance when you have the technique. Horse stance, and horse stance. Okay. Those are the 3 stances that you find in foundation here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and run through good technique one more time with the foundation here. We're going to keep it about that same speed. I'm going to go ahead and just count us through this time. Good technique, you just want to do each technique as correctly as possible. This is the merit you want to get down before you start moving into your power. So foundation Hyung, good technique. My count. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1 and 2. Okay, that was foundation Hyung, looking at first merit of good pattern, good technique. Okay. Once you have your technique down, we're going to go ahead and transition to the second merit of good pattern, which is going to be power. So we're basically going to move through the pattern quickly, quicker, and with more force. But we want to make sure that our techniques remain clean. We don't want it to be sloppy. Okay, so we don't add the power until we add the technique. So once through, okay. Foundation Hyung, good technique, good power. Okay. My count, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go. Aye! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go. Aye! 1 and 2. Okay, that was the foundation Hyung. Adding power to the techniques. Third merit we're going to look at is going to be focus. Now, focus means 2 things during the pattern. You want to make sure that you are watching what you're doing and watching where you're going. So I want to make sure that even though doing a pattern, I do not have an actual opponent in front of me, I'm looking at where that block or where that technique and strike is going to go. So I'm looking at what the strike is doing, and I'm going to look before I turn. Now we have a couple of turns in the foundation here, and it's really, really important. They're big turns. You want to make sure you're moving, watching with your eyes, and then moving with your body. So we're going to run through. I'm going to slow things back down. We're going to look at focus in our pattern foundation here. My count. Good focus. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and go. Hey! Now with the big turn, this is where you really want to watch your focus changes, because I'm changing from straight to the front to the back. So I'm looking over the shoulder first before I turn. Do my technique. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and go. Hey! Another big turn, so I'm looking over the shoulder, looking all the way around. And 1. And then same thing with the second technique. I'm going to step together and step back out, so I want to chamber, look, and 2. Okay. That is foundation Hyung. Looking at the first 3 merits: a good pattern, good technique, power, and focus. Okay, and our formal stance technique we're going to be looking at this term is going to be the horse stance with the shuffle step. So go ahead, good review on the horse stance. You want to go ahead and we'll want your feet a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. It doesn't have to be extreme. You don't have to be way, way out there, but you do want it a little bit wider than shoulder width. You want your knees bent. You're just standing up straight. Defeats the purpose of the stance. So a good bend. Also, it doesn't have to be a super bend. Your knees need to be bent. You need to feel it working in your legs. And I'll just take my hands and just pull them right into my hips. Keeps my back up nice and straight. I want my head over my shoulders, over my feet. I don't want to be bending forward or bending backwards. Now, an angle to the side demonstrates this really, really well. Okay. Hands in at my hips. Okay. You don't want to be either bending forward or bending back. A lot of times you just have to kind of sit down a little bit more in the stance to keep you up nice and upright. The horse stance is a very strong stance from side to side, not necessarily from front to back. So if you can have a partner test your stance, we'll go ahead and show you how that's done. I'll have Mr. Disselkorn kind of shift in for me. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get into a really nice horse stance. And Mr. Disselkorn is just going to go ahead and give me a good push to the side. Okay, give me a little harder push to the side. It's a really strong stance, side to side. Now, front to back, not so much. Okay? If, when your partner is testing your stance, and you don't have the knees bent, it's not very strong. He's basically just going to push you over. So if your partner's doing that really easily, bend his knees a little bit further. Okay? Let's just do a quick one side to side, Mr. Disselkorn. So, sloppy horse stance. Okay, gonna get pushed. Bend those knees. Okay, nice and strong. Okay, it really works side to side. It's not a front to back stance. Thank you, sir. Okay. If you're in your horse stance and it feels perfectly comfortable, you're not doing it correctly. Okay? You should have some tension in your thighs where they're working to keep you upright. Okay, we have a blocking and punching drill that we can do out of the horse stance. We're going to be working with this term. It's going to have a series of blocks and then punches at the end. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate first. And then we'll go ahead and discuss this. So, in a good horse stance, knees bent, feet shoulder width apart. I'm up nice and straight. I'm going to go ahead and start the blocks with my left hand. I'm going to do a series of 2 blocks of each type. So I'm going to do a low block on each side, an inner forearm block, and then a high block. You want to make sure you've got good chambers on these. So I've chambered for my low block, bring it through. Second one, good chamber, forearm block, good chamber for your high block, high block. And we're going to finish it up with 2 punches to the middle of the body. Now we want to go ahead and start this off nice and slow. You want to make sure you're doing the techniques correctly. Once you get a little more experience, then we will pick up the pace. So I'm going to go ahead. It's an 8 count exercise. Good chamber. We're just going to count through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can do it from the side. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And then you're just gradually picking up speed as we get the techniques memorized. Okay, the last thing we're going to look at with the horse stance is going to be a shuffle step. Now you'll actually see this a lot in our patterns. Normally we'll do a technique to one side in the horse stance, and then we will shuffle into a new horse stance and do another technique on the other side. It's really important that you're not doing this and just doing your strikes without moving your feet. The shuffle step is how we want to transition from horse stance to horse stance. A couple of things with the shuffle step. In the horse stance, I'm going to go ahead and start this with my hands in at my hips. We want to start in a good horse stance. We want to go ahead and I'm going to be moving to my right, to your left. I want to go ahead and bring my feet together. Not all the way together. I need to slap heels, but bring them close together before I step back out into that next horse stance. I want to try to keep on the same level, so I actually want to keep my knees bent through the movement, so I'm not going up and then back down like that. Okay, I want to try to keep my knees bent through the movement, so I'm staying on that same level. Keeping your back nice and straight the whole time, keeping your knees bent as you transition from horse stance to horse stance. Okay, we'll practice that with our hands in at our hips. We will eventually work that with knife hand strikes. That's a lot of times you'll see that technique, a knife hand strike to one side from a horse stance, a shuffle step into another horse stance with a knife hand strike on the other. So we'll work both the formal stance, which is a horse stance, and the shuffle step, how we transition from horse stance to horse stance. Okay, and the last thing we're going to look at for our 8A material for our fundamentals class will be our formal kicking technique, which will be the side kick from the L stance. We'll go ahead, take a quick look at our basic L stance before we begin. Feet together, turn your back foot out, step out with your lead foot, both knees are bent. You want to go ahead and keep your heels same plane. You want to keep most of your weight on your back leg. Really important because we're going to be kicking with our front leg. If, before your kick, you have to shift your weight hard to the back foot, it means you have too much weight on your front leg. So really anytime you're in an L stance, you want to kind of check that to make sure that you've got that weight shifted towards the back leg. From the side, okay, so just like that. Feet on L shape, weight on the back leg, both knees are bent. Now, for the lead leg side kick, we want to get the chamber correct. If you've got the chamber correct, the rest of the technique will work. As you're in your L stance, the first thing you want to do, the leg that you're kicking with, that lead leg, you want to take your knee and pull it towards your back hip. This will also pivot your back foot. Now, pivot is probably the most difficult thing to really remember to do while you're doing the side kick. I kind of incorporate it into the chamber of my lead leg. As I pull my foot back into that chamber, I just let it pull my back foot into the pivot. So as you can see, my back foot pivots towards the back of the room. That's what you want your back foot to look like during the chamber. I want your foot up towards your back and want the foot up nice and high. That's the hard part. That's the chamber. Once you get the chamber correct, it's just a straight line kick, straight out. You're striking with the heel of our foot. Okay. So you want to make sure you're pulling your toes back, striking with the correct part of your foot, especially if you're using this with force, either in self-defense or board breaking. You might want to make sure you're using your heel. And if there's anything else I've forgotten. Good chamber, 4 count. Yes, when you practice the side kick, we can break this technique down into 4 counts. This is really good to practice with your side kick. You're starting out, I kind of advise you go actually really, really slow with it. I'm going to do a few to the front and a few to the back. So I'm going to start, hands up in guard, just a good place to keep them, in my good L stance. And for my side kick, my chamber is going to be count 1. The kick is going to be 2. The retraction is going to be 3. Placing it back on the floor is going to be my 4 count. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to keep it slow, and more practice, the better you are on the balance. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. From the side, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Nice and slow. Need some support. You can use a chair or the rails and just gently kind of hold your balance a little bit as you're kicking. That'll help a little bit with your balance so you're not focused so much on that. But as you practice through that 4 count, it'll really help with your balance also. Now we're going to go ahead and work this on a target with a partner. So I'm going to call Mr. Just going out here. And I'm going to go ahead and go on this side, sir. Okay, we're going to start with the touch and push like we do with all of our kicks. Basically, what I want to do, get my foot onto the target with a nice little push. Okay, so I'm not aiming for power, I'm really just getting technique, finding the target. Okay, and I'm going to go nice and slow. It's a touch and push. So up, touch, and push. Okay, good pivot, and push. Push. As you practice, the better you get. Okay, try to find a spot on the target. And push. And you're going to have to work a little bit with that distance. If you're too far away, you're not going to get a very good push. Okay. Once you feel the technique is better, you're getting your foot on the target where you want it, you're getting a good push, we can pick up the pace, pick up the power. Okay, just like we do in our patterns, you want to get the technique down before you add your power. So I'll have this one shift back in. Okay, not going to do a lot of power because it's not a very big shield. Okay, not a very big target, so I'm not going to go super hard with power. But you want to get a good strike with your heel. Chamber and kick. Sorry. Not the best target, but we work with what we've got. Oh, that'll work. Excellent. Okay? Don't just throw your foot. Look for the target and kick. Very smart. Okay? Go to L stance, chamber, kick, back through. Okay. That is the lead leg side kick. Make sure you start in a good L stance. That's going to help Make sure you get a good chamber before you kick. Okay. Work the touch and push on a target, and then you can add some speed and power. Now the very last thing we're going to look at is going to be the back leg round kick. Now with this, I'm going to set it the same way. Except we're not kicking with the lead leg, we're kicking with the back leg. So we actually have to pivot on our lead leg around so we can kick with the back. This will put our front foot into a good pivot position. And we want to go ahead and get that leg up fairly high in the chamber. And just the same way, it's going to come through the straight line kick. Okay. Good pivot. Use your shoulders to kind of pivot you around. Kick. With the back leg side kick, the pivot is a little easier because you're pivoting into it. The kick's a little harder because it has a little more distance to go. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick look at that on a target with a touch and push. We're not going to add power. We're actually going to take this nice and slow because this will be a new technique. Let me go ahead and have you on this side too, Miss Giscon. Okay. Distance is going to be a little bit greater. Can you take a small step that way? Because I am pivoting, so I am not using this leg. I'm going to be using that leg. Make sure I've got the distance down. Good pivot. You want to keep your foot up nice and high. You want to keep your toes up so you're not dragging the floor. You don't want your chamber to be way down here, but you want your chamber, your foot to be on the same level as your knees. Good pivot. Come through and strike. And just a touch and a push. It's a little harder to do a touch and a push, so you actually have to slow it down. Touch and push. Touch and push. And try to get those toes out. Really strike with your heel. Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay, that is our formal kicking technique. The lead leg side kick out of the L stance and the back leg side kick.